Pencil Kings, 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 Pencil Kings.
You don't really need like one cohesive story, start to finish, and there's like a million characters and stuff. You just need compelling images.
All right, I'm excited for this because I feel like there's a lot of people who are in a similar space. Either if you're, and it doesn't matter if you're young or old, but it's about the transition, and we'll just call it with air quotes here, going pro. So today we're talking with Cathleen McAllister. And to start off, Kathleen, why don't you give people a 1-minute overview of who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive into your story because I'm excited for this.
Awesome. So hi, I'm Kathleen. I am a visual development artist at Real Effects, and I just recently graduated. I went to college right out of high school, graduated in May, and now I'm at Real Effects, which is really exciting.
And yeah, what I'm excited for with this conversation is just how recently you graduated. And if somebody listens to this years later, you'll be well established, but you're literally right out of school, 6 months ago?
Yeah, I think something like that.
Awesome. So I want to go back into high school, and who were you, or what was your art like, and what was your thoughts about your own art when you were in high school? Because there's a transition that happened, but let's start at the beginning.
So basically, I was born in Georgia, and then my whole family moved to Seattle when I was like 13. So I was in Seattle not Seattle, but Redmond for junior high and high school. And in high school, like I had drawn my whole life. Like I was always like the artsy kid. I did a lot of doodles, drew a lot of Disney princesses. And then in high school, like there weren't a lot of artists at my high school. So, people like compliment you in high school. They're like, wow, you're so good, that kind of stuff. So I thought that I was good, like most high schoolers. And then when I got to Otis, it was like everyone was better than me. So that was quite the learning experience. But like in high school, I didn't even know what concept art was. I just kind of went on DeviantArt and I was like, oh, these are really cool environmental illustrations. I want to do that one day. But originally I wanted to go into science. So I was like focusing on AP classes, and like I took the SAT like 4 times, and I really wanted to go into marine biology or like environmental science or something, but I wasn't really sure because I didn't really know that art was an option. Like I just didn't know that it was a career path. So yeah, so that was my high school experience. And then
do you remember what your portfolio was like at high school, or what you used to apply for Otis? I remember mine, and
mine was so bad.
Yeah.
Like I had a lot of like colored pencil illustrations and stuff with like I had no knowledge of figure drawing, anatomy, like nothing like that. No color like knowledge. I was just basing my color knowledge off of like other paintings or like what I wanted it to be. So there was no like, I didn't even know like what bounce light was or ambient light, like nothing like that. So it was like very, I don't even know how to explain the illustrations, but they were very, they were interesting. Yeah, and I even had tried digital. Like I learned Photoshop when I was really young, and then I tried digital painting on like a tiny bamboo tablet. So I had a few digital paintings that were all with like the round brush with like lowered opacity. It was really great. So yeah.
Very blurry, I'm guessing. Yeah,
very blurry.
So now that you look back, are you surprised that you could even get into art school? And I think it's an important question because a lot of people feel like they're not good enough to get into art school, or they're really worried about it. But I feel like except for maybe a few schools, it's actually, I don't know if it's actually that hard to get into art school. I'm not sure. I haven't actually asked this question before. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really not hard to get into Otis. Like if I got in somehow and like I didn't know anything, like, but it really depends because Otis was catering to high school students, whereas Art Center is catering to people that already know what they're doing. So I know a lot of people that didn't get into Art Center straight out of high school because they actually expect you to have fundamental knowledge. Otis was kind of like, we want to see if you've ever made art, and it's really easy to get in. I also took that AP art portfolio class in high school where I made like all this art specifically to get into an art school. But yeah, I really think it's a lot easier to get into Otis. I'm not really sure about any other schools, but yeah, Art Center is a lot harder.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. The different schools are catering to different crowds, but I mean, things worked out for you. So what was it like when you first got to, obviously you get in, you're excited, you're moving to LA, and for those of you who don't know where Otis is, we've had one Otis grad on before, and is it in Playa del Rey or Marina del Rey?
Yeah,
or
it's around there. It's like right north of the airport.
Okay. So a great place to be discovered, hired, you're meeting all the right people, that you probably had amazing industry artists coming into the school here and there to give talks and whatnot. But what was it like that first year? Because when we were just getting warmed up here, you said it was, you were maybe a little underprepared.
Yeah, definitely. So the class that hit me the most was figure drawing, because it was so uncomfortable. Like, I'd never drawn any kind of like real anatomy, and it was really hard to learn anatomy for me. And gesture is really hard for me still. But that class was a huge shock to me. It was 6 hours of drawing all day, and I had only done maybe like an hour long for a drawing or something. But yeah, it was really rigorous. And then sophomore and junior and senior year happened. I was like, wow, freshman year was a joke. But yeah, first getting in, the workload was really high, and so I wasn't prepared for that at all.
And where did you feel you sat, like your skill levels were in comparison to your classmates? Were you because I remember going into art school, and we didn't have a formal art program in my high school, and I was really worried like I was going to be the worst, because I came from a village, go to the city, and like, oh, these city kids, like in sports and everything, the city kids just crushed us, always crushed everything. And I just thought, well, art would be the same. But actually, I found that when I got to school that just having some fundamental things like understanding perspective, it like puts you kind of miles ahead of some people. But I don't know, what was it like in your experience?
I was very bad. I was really struggling, but I think by the end of freshman year, I was kind of in the middle in terms of skill level, because I had the drive. Like, I really, really wanted to learn, and I worked really hard. So yeah, I ended up somewhere in the middle, because I actually didn't know perspective or anything like that, not even values or anything like that, until like sophomore year. Freshman year, we had like a perspective class, but it was really basic. But yeah, I learned like a lot of stuff, and I was working really hard, and so I ended up somewhere like in the middle in that first year.
And can I ask, what is to you, what is working really hard? And the reason I ask is, I feel like there's a lot of people who think they're working hard, but they're actually not working that hard at all.
Oh, I totally agree. So I think that there is a misconception that if you go to all the right classes and you watch all the tutorials and you put in the hours, that you'll just magically get better. But it really doesn't work that way. Like, you have to be really actively learning, like critiquing yourself along the way, like that kind of stuff, and like actually making sure you're absorbing the knowledge. Because I think people take like a million classes and they're so exhausted from it that they actually aren't learning. And yeah, putting in the hours is super important, and you have to. But I think that if you're like, people would sit in the labs until 5 a.m. just chatting, and then be like, oh, I pulled an all-nighter, I went to bed at 5 a.m. But the reality is they were just like sitting in the computer labs talking for a lot of it. They weren't like focusing. So that's a really important thing.
And how did you manage to focus? Because I feel like it's easy to fall into that trap. You're meeting all these students, like you're freshly out of your parents' house. There's all kinds of parties and I'm sure fun things going on. But how do you actually sit and focus and be intentional about what you're trying to achieve?
I made friends with people that wanted to do the same exact thing. So I made friends with people that decided
Yes.
that we were not going to go out. And so we decided to be losers for like 4 years. But I think that's super important, is having the right friend group, because I knew a lot of people that their friends were all, like a lot of them were already from LA. And so they were friends with people that partied, and there's just no time for that in art school, really, to get all your work done in time. So yeah, making friends with the right people is super important. And having friends that do a similar thing that you do is also super important, because we kept each other on task. Like, we did Google Hangouts for all of my senior and junior year, and that really helped me focus, because I could ask them for advice while I was working. I bought myself like a computer and a Cintiq at some point so I could work at home, because working at school was really distracting. So if you have that option, I strongly recommend it.
And when you say Google Hangouts, basically you mean that you all sat on a hangout together,
Yeah.
and then if you had you were just sort of like maybe chatting a little bit here and there, but mainly working. And then when you had a question, or you're like, hey, I just finished this thing, you guys want to take a quick look? Or
Exactly. Yeah. That was
very cool. And I feel like I just have to restate how powerful this is. And if you're soloing it or you're working just alone, I've heard this story so many times now where there's this peer group, this like magical peer group of people who are serious, and they just decide like, no, we're going to make it. We're going to put in the time. Yeah. We're going to say no to whatever, Friday night drinks.
Yeah.
Or if you go for drinks, it's like you're the person that shows up like right at the end because you had to get your thing done first. And you're like, yeah, I'm here. I had my one beer and now it's back home. But yeah, if you're going at this alone, like, do whatever you can to find some people, but they need to be serious.
Yeah.
I think that's the key.
Yeah, because like we still had fun though. That's the thing. I think a lot of people like we still like went out like maybe once every 2 months, and it was really awesome. But we all understood each other's situation, so it wasn't like, oh, you didn't come out with us for like 4 weekends, so you're never coming again. It was great.
Okay, so at the end of the first year, you're about middle of the pack. How did your mindset change? Like, because you said, there was a point where you didn't really realize what concept art was. Obviously, by that point you would. But if you were to give advice to like first year or like, is it freshman? Like the day one, Kathleen, after your first year, like, would you just say like, don't worry, you got it. You'll find the right people and everything will be fine. Just make sure to be serious about this. Or is there some things you would have changed or some advice you would have given to that day one, Kathleen?
It's hard to say because I kind of stumbled onto the path. And so I think everything kind of happened for a reason. But yeah, I don't even know because I didn't know what concept art was. I really lucked out, and I had some awesome teachers in sophomore year that basically taught me everything. It was like a crash course in concept art. But the advice I would give, I wish I could have just gone back and like told myself what concept art was and like what classes to take and stuff, because I had a friend that was telling me like, oh, take this class, this teacher is famous, or like, things like that. Because I didn't know the names of any artists. I didn't know the history. I didn't know anything. So I had someone giving me advice, which was really good. Yeah. And then I would say, like, I really wouldn't recommend going the 4-year college route. It worked out for me. I kind of like stumbled into the right place, but I just think it's a lot of money. And I think there's such better options now of like taking a single class, like at CGMA or Schoolism or like any of those things instead of going to a 4-year. Yeah, that's probably the advice I would give. I would have saved a lot of money.
So as you continued on, then, because I think it's cool that you're working, and obviously you're working in air quotes the industry. What I found is really funny, that every industry has an industry. Like web design is like, I work in the industry. It's like, yes, whatever you do is like that's the only industry that exists. But anyway, you're in the entertainment industry, and what happened in the next 3 years then? Did you just continue on that same path of like the same group of friends, the same focus, the same drive, or was there anything that changed along the way? Because I'm really want to speak to the person who's maybe in high school right now, or maybe has been out, and maybe they've done an unrelated degree, but they realize that they do want to do concept art, but they don't realize like what that personal transformation looks like?
Yeah, I'm trying to think because for me, a lot of the pivotal stuff was just learning the techniques, but a lot of it was like ego and stuff like that. Like really understanding, like when you're working on a movie or something, it's not your project, and the art you're making isn't for you. It's not to like continue your portfolio, or it's not like your vision, even though it's definitely got your personality in it. But just like letting go of your ego, like accepting critiques, listening to everything people say is super important. That's something I had to learn, because your gut reaction when someone's critiquing your work is to be like, I made this is my baby, and you want to defend it, but you kind of have to let go of that. So that was a big thing for me. I had a really awesome teacher that was really blunt, and I thought he was scary for a long time. So I learned to not argue and just listen, and I would like take notes on my phone of what he was saying about my work and try to remember every critique, and then apply all those critiques. Like not just be like, oh yeah, cool, I'll do that, but like actually doing the critiques, because I trusted that he was way better than me, and if I wanted to get good, you just listen to the people that are better than you. So that was a huge thing for me, and having that teacher was awesome too. That was a big turning point for my art life.
Did anybody cry in the crits?
I've seen some people upset. Haven't seen crying though. But I know it happened. I know it has.
Yeah, we had one prof that was famous for like making people cry. I never was able to have her course. Her courses were always filled up, so I never. Sure. And I was lazy on registration day. But,
yeah, there's always that one teacher that's like notorious for being super harsh. This teacher I had was blunt, but he wasn't like he didn't get personal. Like I really don't actually think it's useful when teachers, like there were a few teachers that would get personal, like personal insults and things like that, not just about your art anymore, but they were starting to like go after you. And I just don't think that helps young students. Like I survived, I was fine, but I think a lot of people get really messed up by that. I don't think it's helpful.
Yeah. It's like, if you haven't seen the movie Whiplash, I feel like there's an art teacher out there that's like that guy in Whiplash that's just like pushing people. I'm like, I'm going to either crush you or create greatness. Yeah, exactly. But there's no middle ground.
Yeah. And it works for some people. I like too much negativity though. I can't really deal with that. Yeah. Bluntness though, that's awesome.
So as you're going through, you did the full 4 years?
I did, yeah.
So as you're going through, are you starting to get commission work then at some point? Or are you starting to get noticed online? What's happening in the outside of school world? And I think it's cool because you're working so hard, and I want to hear about the good things that come from all that hard work, right? There should be good things.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think a big thing is marketing yourself. It sounds vain and it feels so weird to be using every social media platform, but it's actually like how you make money. And so like I felt so weird like tagging stuff at first, but you actually kind of have to. Like I've gotten all of my clients through Behance and ArtStation pretty much, not LinkedIn, which is, technically the professional website. But yeah, every client I've really gotten was through social media. And so you just kind of have to learn how to navigate that. It could honestly be a whole class. Social media is so hard. But like having a Tumblr, Instagram, Behance, ArtStation, Facebook, all of those platforms to get your work out there, and finding a community that appreciates your work and does a similar thing is also really helpful. Like I've met a lot of really cool people online just because we follow each other, and yeah, it's really awesome. But yeah, so in junior year, I started getting freelance. So I worked at a company summer of junior year, like going into senior year. And then I also did freelance on my first movie, which actually came out recently. It was Welcome to Monster High. It was really cool. So that was really exciting to see. But yeah, all that happened in junior year. And that was my very first experience with freelance and working. And I'm glad that I got to do that before I graduated. I was really happy about that.
And what was the feeling like? Because you went to see Monster High, I'm guessing in the theaters, right?
Oh no, I haven't. I think it's a kids movie. It's like for the Monster High dolls. So I think maybe it was on TV or something.
But you've seen it.
I haven't seen it. I've only seen trailers. It just recently came out like a week or two ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But yeah.
I was going to ask what that feeling was like when you sat until the end of the credits and saw your name. You're like, oh, there it is. And now you're one of those people that sits to the end of the credits for everything. Because you're like, oh, that's my friend. That's my friend.
Yeah,
I know that guy.
Well, I did see, when I went to go see Kubo, I saw a trailer for it. And I was like, wait, shit, I worked on that. Oh my God, I worked on that. I was really excited. So that was cool to see the trailer for that movie in theaters. I was like, whoa, no way.
Okay, so you make it to graduation day. You're already freelancing, so I feel like your career is already off to the races. Was there any hiccups along the way or any second guessing?
Yes, so much, all the time. So I was actually hired at Real Effects in March. So I knew that I would be starting right after graduation. But then my start date got delayed a few times, and then they weren't sure if they even needed me. So for like 4 months after graduation, actually really until like last week. But yeah, for like several months, I was just kind of floating and I felt like a huge failure. I was like, oh, I had this studio job. Like I was so excited. I was doing freelance, but for some reason I felt like I wasn't working. I was still just kind of like stuck. So yeah, that was it. That was a huge hiccup that I just recently got out of.
What do you mean you felt stuck? Like you're working. How are you stuck?
I think I was just so excited to be in a studio and like learning with people, because I really like to have people around me for like, and I like having critiques a lot because I still felt kind of studenty. So I was like, I really need feedback. I want to keep learning. And freelance, you're kind of going it alone. Like you're kind of like, it's really easy to just be in your house and you're just kind of like in a cave painting all night. So yeah, it was really hard to do personal work after doing freelance for like 10 hours a day, because you're sitting in the same chair, nothing is changing, and I'm doing like a really similar art style as the freelance. And so yeah, it was really hard to like work on my portfolio or like do anything. And with freelance, you schedule yourself, and I was struggling to schedule myself very well. So yeah, several months of that. But it was really awesome freelance, which I enjoyed. Yeah, it's just tough.
So being like fairly new to going into a studio, I feel like there's these conceptions that people have about what the feedback they'll get is going to be like, or what their job is actually going to be like. And it's actually not. I feel like people are too focused on like how detailed or how skilled they need to be. And in some cases, you might need to do that. Like if you're a matte painter, has to be spot on.
Yeah.
But for visual development or concept art, I feel like it's more of like conveying the idea.
Yeah.
And what are the crits like that you're getting? Are they what you expected going into it?
They're so much friendlier than I expected. Like expected to be like ripped apart on a daily basis, but people are so nice in the industry. Like I remember hearing all these horror stories from old teachers of like, you know, like you'll get ripped apart if you're 2 minutes late to work, you know, stuff like that. And people are super nice. Like it's really not like that at all. And I'm getting really good feedback. I'm learning a lot too. Like I really like to do those like tight paintings of like interiors with like a ton of detail and stuff like that. But we're not in that stage. There's definitely a time and a place for those kind of paintings. But for me, it was learning how to get looser in my paintings, because I literally was not able to for a long time. Like I'm doing a lot of composition sketches and stuff like that. And that was like my most hated thing during school, was doing composition sketches. But now I'm learning how to do those much faster. So that was a big thing, is learning how to do loose paintings. Yeah. And like learning the pipeline too, because I'm still learning that.
What does that mean for somebody that doesn't understand learning the pipeline? You just spoke some Greek, I'm sure, to some people.
Just like I'm still learning it myself, so this is like my
Oh, but that's great though. Like to hear it because you're so fresh. So I feel like your answers are very honest and very valid for the mindset of where a lot of people are at. So yeah, lay it on us.
So from what I've seen, and this is kind of a process I even use in my paintings, it kind of goes super blue sky. So like all these like really loose paintings, the director, all the people in charge, they don't even really know what they're going for. They just they don't know how to visualize the thing that they want. So that's what your job is, to help them see it and even come up with more ideas from like loose paintings and stuff. And yeah, you won't always hit the mark the first time. That's why there's always so much unused art in movies, because they're just trying to understand what the movie would look like. And a lot of times the director may have like a clear vision, but then your art could possibly change their vision, which is really cool. So your art could either continue in the direction of the movie where the director's vision is, or it could completely change it, which is also really cool. And then it goes to like 3D, kind of. It's like a really previs stage in 3D, like just block meshes and stuff. And then a lot of people like draw over it and like redraw and figure out scale and all this stuff. And then it goes back into painting. So it's very back and forth between all the departments, and all the departments have an influence on each other. Yeah, so that was a big thing for me. It's like you're not just by yourself painting, you're part of a big team, and yeah, you just kind of have to do what's most necessary at the time. So right now for me it's loose paintings, but it could possibly be more technical in the future.
Right. And what's like an example brief or a starting point? Like what do you get handed in like when you show up for work today, assuming you're not working on anything from yesterday and it's like a fresh painting today, what do you start with? Is it like something in your inbox? Like what is it?
So right now it's just kind of like looking at the script and picking story moments and environments and stuff, and just kind of doing a lot of comp sketches to explore those places. So I just kind of check in with my art directors every morning and see what I need to do that day. And then I just make a lot of paintings, and they come around every now and again and give advice and stuff like that. And then there's also like a lot of meetings where we meet with people in Dallas and executives and stuff, and they talk about our art. So that happens about once or twice a week.
Cool. And in this loose painting stage, just to give somebody an idea, how many paintings do you think you do in a day, assuming that you don't get sidetracked with a long meeting or something like that?
I would say I do about 8 or 10 composition sketches. And it depends on if I decide to put color or not. So there was a day where I did like 5 color compositions. And then I think yesterday I did like just black and white ones. And I was able to do more. So yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, I'm saying, but
I don't know. I sat down to try and draw something last night, and I was like, wow, 2 hours went by, and I barely got anywhere. I mean, I'm not doing it every day. My speed isn't up, but to me, it sounds like from other people I've talked to and courses that we've had on Pencil Kings, it seems like an hour to get something that's like somebody could look at it and be like, okay, I can really see where your vision is going here. An hour seems about right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You'd be surprised how easy it is to focus at work. Like it's a lot easier than in your house. Like, cause I don't know, something about being in the studio, it just makes like 3 hours go by and I've just painted that whole time and not stood up at all. And I'm like, oh shit, it's already like 6 p.m. time to go.
Right.
Yeah. It's a very different environment. It's very easy to like just work all day, and the days go by so fast. It's crazy.
So we should wrap up here, but what advice now, if you could go back, a few years to say you're in grade 11, what would you say to prepare yourself or general advice that you would give to somebody to get them on this path that you think would really help them out?
Oh man, there's so many things.
Well, think back to where you were in high school, right? Like you didn't really know what concept art was. Your stuff was like very blurry. It's just where a lot of high school students are, but and that's fine to be there because you can learn stuff really quickly when you focus on it. But if you were to go back, or somebody from grade 11 came and showed you your exact portfolio today with the blurry stuff and the colored pencils, and said, "Hey, one day I really like doing these environments and interiors," what would you say?
I really think one thing I had to learn was letting go of your story. Like, you don't really need like one cohesive story, start to finish, and there's like a million characters and stuff. You just need compelling images. Like, you don't actually have to have one story. And I think a lot of people get really stressed out by that, and they start like writing their story. I did that once, and it was really awkward. I deleted that. But yeah, I wrote this huge story before I knew, and I had a teacher that was just like, you don't need any of that. Like, you just need compelling illustrations that tell a story. But if you have to explain your story to someone, or you need words to tell the images, then they're not working. And that's a really important thing for people preparing their senior shows and stuff like that. You just got to kind of let go and just make really awesome art. It doesn't all have to go together. It's cool if it all goes together, though. That's always really cool to see. But yeah, just making really compelling pieces that all stand alone and tell their own story. I think that's really important. I know that's more technical, but it really does translate to the final portfolio that you'll be showing when you graduate.
Right. And I just want to break this down a little bit further. So when you say story, like you had an idea for a graphic novel or a comic or something like that?
Oh, I had an idea for like I basically thought that I needed to write like a short plot for like a movie, and then concept like every story moment. And they were like complicated story moments, like things that you can't like look at the image and immediately know what's happening. It was like really like convoluted, and like just my story was a mess. I know people that have had awesome stories. And I know for graphic novels and stuff, you have to have a story, but for visual development specifically, you don't need to like write out your story. You just need really awesome images and designs. Definitely a lot of designs too. It's really important.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, hopping on this podcast. I feel like just this last few sentences, your portfolio just took on or the images I'm looking at on ArtStation just took on a whole new light of like these key moments of like Great Gatsby and some of the other things. And I hope that for somebody who's listening, if you go and look at Kathleen's portfolio, you can start to think in terms of like, these are the key story moments. Like, why is this an important image? They're just from different things. They're not all together at all. But when you look at it, you're like, oh, wow, this is really an inflection point. This is something serious just happened here, or important.
Thanks so much.
All right, Kathleen, where can people find you online? And then we will be wrapped up here.
I'm on all the social media stuff. ArtStation is where most of my work is. And then my personal website is CathleenConcepts.com. And my name is spelled with a C also.
Perfect. And we'll have show notes as usual and links to Kathleen's site and everything else over at pencilkings.com/podcast. Thanks for listening and hope you have an awesome week.
Thanks so much.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
You talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.